Morin. Come on. Look, you're going to come and help us. We can see your eyes twitching.
You're watching Totally True Crime.
Totally True Crime.
Jeremy Rickards was a kind-hearted man with an interesting job. He was a geologist, and in his early career, he would travel the world, mining for gold, diamonds, and precious metals. Those who knew Jeremy described him as a mild-mannered and softly spoken man. He'd studied in the West Midlands of England before his job took him across the globe, and he was highly regarded in his field of work. In 1997, when he was in his late 30s, his work took him to Mali in Africa, and it was whilst he was there that he met a young woman, 23-year-old Maureen. She was a single mother to a young daughter called Chima, and the couple fell in love. They got married soon afterwards, and Jeremy raised Maureen's daughter as his own. They travelled the world together whilst Jeremy worked, and he was financially able to offer Maureen's daughter a private education. The family had everything they could ever want, and never wanted for anything. Eventually, they decided to settle back in the UK, and Jeremy would travel across the world for months at a time for work. Maureen decided that she wanted to study law, and in 2021, when she was 46 years old, she enrolled at the Christchurch University in Kent, in the south of England. She moved into shared accommodation to be near the campus, and Jeremy would join her there when he wasn't working. The other tenants that lived in the shared house with Morin were described as living chaotic lives, and Maureen, who was there to study, would often find herself in arguments with them. She would film these arguments on her mobile phone. So when Jeremy returned home from a job in 2024, he rented an Airbnb close to the shared house, as there wasn't enough room for him to stay there as well. Maureen would come and stay with him to get away from the other tenants. Jeremy had been feeling low. Work had started to dry up, which he had put down to the fact that he was 65 and nearing retirement age. When Jeremy was in the UK, he was known to frequent some of the local pubs in Canterbury, including the Thomas Inglesby Public House. But when he was there, in June 2024, bar staff and other locals noticed that Jeremy had several injuries to his face, including bruising, a cut on his cheek, and an injury to his ear. People who came into contact with him described him as looking, quote, in a bad way. CCTV footage taken from a pub in June 2024 showed a frail and injured Jeremy sitting at the table, wincing in pain. He looks dazed and dishevelled, and a lump is visible on the top of his head. On the 2nd of June, Jeremy had called his brother, who lived in the north of England. He told him that he was having problems in his marriage and asked if he could come and stay with him for a while. After that call, his brother never heard from him again. A few weeks later, Chima, Maureen's daughter, who was now living in Kenya, received messages from her mother telling her that her stepfather was working in Saudi Arabia. This wasn't unusual. Jeremy would often travel the world for work, sometimes last minute. But when Chima messaged his phone directly to check in on him, she noticed that the messages she received back from his phone weren't written in his normal text pattern. Chima had a suspicion that her mother was writing the messages using Jeremy's phone. But why would she do that? She texted her mother asking for the truth, and on the 28th of June, Maureen replied, telling Chima that Jeremy had taken his own life whilst he was working in Saudi Arabia. She said this had happened on the 8th of June, 19 days prior. Maureen then sent her daughter abusive messages, blaming her for Jeremy's death. None of this made sense, and Chima didn't believe what her mother was saying. She was increasingly concerned for her stepfather's welfare. She called the authorities in Saudi Arabia, who confirmed that he had not entered the country. She then called the police in Kent and reported Jeremy as a missing person. Police officers visited Morin, where she assured them that her husband of 27 years had told her that he was going to work in Saudi Arabia. They told her that the authorities confirmed that he never arrived and said that there was no record of him leaving the UK. She said he may have gone to visit his brother in Middlesbrough in the north of England. His brother confirmed that he'd never arrived. So where was Jeremy? The police looked at his bank activity and saw that his bank cards were being used in a shop in Canterbury just days prior. They had bought cleaning products, and when they looked at the CCTV footage from the store, they found Maureen was the one using his cards. Suspicious, the police decided to arrest Maureen for fraud. As they arrived at the shared house she lived in, officers were confronted with a strong smell. Maureen's home was cluttered and chaotic, with items piled on top of each other. As the police enter, Maureen can be seen kneeling on the floor, and she starts to pack a bag as they arrest her.
Maureen, hello.
Hello.
Hello. So the time is 12:23. Okay, so I'm placing you under arrest under suspicion of fraud.
Fraud of what?
False representation. Okay, so
False representation of
so
what?
the circumstances are you're using your husband's card without permission to make purchases. Okay.
The officers take her to a waiting police van, and when they arrive at the station, Maureen is found lying down in the back of the van, and she won't get up.
Maureen, come on. Yeah, you're gonna come and help us. We can see your eyes twitching.
I am not moving from here. You tell the government. You tell my university.
Alright,
you
fine.
tell Dr.
We get a
Chima.
skip so
You
you
tell
can
your
save us.
company.
The officers had to physically remove her from the back of the van and take her into custody. They seize her mobile phone, and on it they find a large number of videos. Maureen would often film parts of her life, offering commentary while she was doing so. They found videos of her and Jeremy shopping for rings as they were planning to renew their wedding vows. There were videos of them walking through gardens, commenting on the flowers. Then they came across a video of her in the garden of her shared home. In the video, she pans the camera around to a section of the garden that's overgrown, and she says because the plants are thorny and spiky, she's put a traffic cone over that area, so she won't scratch her legs while she's out there wearing a nightgown. And whilst these officers are looking at the videos on Maureen's mobile phone, a search team are looking through her home, and it doesn't take long for them to notice the traffic cone in the garden. The officers notice that the ground beneath it was disturbed, and they start moving away piles of grass cuttings that have been put beneath the cone. Then they find a holdall, and in that holdall is the body of Jeremy Rickards. Maureen was rearrested on suspicion of murder, and the police continued to go through the videos on her phone. It didn't take long for the videos to give officers a clear indication of what had been going on behind the couple's closed doors. Videos of Maureen physically abusing Jeremy, calling him names, and threatening to kill him were found on her camera roll. In one video, Jeremy can be heard saying, Please stop hitting me, love. Please stop. Please. Maureen says, I'm going to kill you. There were several videos found from that specific day, which totalled over 15 minutes. 15 minutes of him begging her to stop hurting him. In one video, he begs her to take him to the hospital, and she refuses. She calls him, quote, British boy, as he sits in a chair not moving. On other videos, dated a few days before he was murdered, Maureen accuses him of punishing her, though she doesn't give any more details. He says he's not, and he denies doing anything wrong on the video. Another clip shows Jeremy lying on the floor, undressed, and struggling to get up. His wife is filming him, saying that he is drunk, that she's done with their marriage, and she wants him to go to rehab. During a post-mortem examination, the pathologist found multiple rib fractures, a neck fracture that was consistent with strangulation, and a broken nose. There were other healed fractures to his neck and ribs that had been caused up to 10 weeks before his death. People who knew Jeremy from the local pub said they'd asked him about his facial injuries. To one person, he said that he'd been in a car accident, which was not true. To another, he simply said, Maureen was in a bad mood with me. The post-mortem concluded that Jeremy received 5 stab wounds to the chest, 2 of which pierced his heart. Jeremy had been in poor health. He'd been suffering with pancreatitis, and it would not have taken much for Morin to be able to overpower him. Maureen denied hurting her husband, despite the video evidence, and she denied being responsible for his death. But some of the most damning evidence came from Google searches that she told Jeremy she'd made. She told him, on the video, that she'd Googled how to kill your husband. The last known movements of Jeremy were on the 8th of June, when he called his mobile phone network provider to top up his credit. After that, he was never heard from again. Prosecutors used evidence from forensic scientists of entomology, who study insects and their natural life cycles, to narrow down the time frame in which they believed Jeremy was murdered. They studied maggots and other insects that were found in the home where they believed Jeremy's body was initially placed, and they narrowed the time frame down to sometime between the 8th and 26th of June. They found that his body had been concealed in a cupboard in Maureen's bedroom, and when the smell had become too bad, she'd wrapped him in bin bags and put his body inside a holdall. She then dragged it down 2 flights of stairs out to the garden and buried it under grass cuttings and shrubs. Maureen had even hired a handyman to cut the grass, as her husband lay dead just feet away in the bag, so she would have more cuttings to attempt to conceal his body with. The bin bags that Jeremy was wrapped in had Maureen's DNA on them. On the 8th or 9th of June, one of the other tenants in the shared house heard a repetitive thudding noise in the middle of the night. He recognised it to be someone dragging a heavy bag down the 2 flights of stairs. This was around 3:30 a.m. in the morning. He looked out of the window and saw Maureen in the garden, looking up at the sky. Maureen continued to deny killing her husband, and a trial was set for February 2025 at Maidstone Crown Court, where she pled not guilty. The trial lasted for 18 days, and after the evidence was presented, the jury found her guilty of murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 22 years. She was sentenced the day before her 51st birthday, so Jeremy Rickards could be out in her 70s if she's eligible for parole. Detective Inspector Colleen McKean from Kent Police said this outside of court.
The pain and suffering subjected to Jeremy Rickards in his final days is quite horrifying, cruel, and I hope that they can find some solace in this outcome today. What this does raise, once again, unfortunately, is the danger of domestic violence in our community.
Jeremy's stepdaughter Chima didn't attend the trial, though she did provide a statement to be read to the jury. In it, she said her parents' marriage had been an unpleasant representation of love. No evidence to suggest Jeremy had been abusive to Maureen was ever found. In reaction to his death, the Crown Prosecution Service used the press surrounding this case to remind us that domestic abuse also affects men, with 27% of reported domestic abuse cases in the UK coming from male victims. But less than 5% of victims supported by local domestic abuse services are men, indicating that a stigma still remains when they are the victims and they need to ask for help. A report by the Mankind Initiative estimates that between 3 to 5 men die by suicide per week because of domestic abuse. Jeremy Rickards worked hard for the duration of his life. He travelled the world, he raised another man's child as his own, and provided for his family. This mild-mannered man deserved so much more than being murdered and buried in a garden. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting, please subscribe for more weekly true crime videos like this. You've been watching Totally True Crime.